And hello again. Now, we are here with this painting, Smyrna, Ablaze. This painting was actually inspired for me to paint by a friend of mine who wrote a poem about Smyrna. And when I read her poem, I was fascinated, and I started painting it. And when I was finishing it off, I met up with Panayiotis and we started chatting, and I put a little extra in there than what I was originally going to put. So, please, I invite Dr. Panayiotis to talk about Smyrna Ablaze.
Okay, thank you once again, Kiki. There are a number of photos of the catastrophe of the Holocaust of Smyrna, September, of course, of 1922. And it's for the centenary, really, that you started painting.
Yes.
You started creating this magnificent work. Partly, I can see you've drawn inspiration from photographs of the black and white photographs. We have no colour. We have no colour photographs of that. No. But again, you've used your artistic license. The flames don't appear in the photographs because all you see is smoke in the photographs. So you use your imagination to say, well, if there's that much smoke, smoke so thick you could not see the sky, there must be a lot of flame. And we know Smyrna was basically timber. Most of the structures were timber and thatch, so therefore very flammable. So there would have been very intense heat and a lot of fire.
Except for the verandas.
The waterfront, they would have been stone. They were stone, wrought iron balconies.
That's wrought iron.
Some of which survived. We've got photographs from after the flames are put out, where you have the roofs have collapsed, but a lot of the facades of the buildings are still there because they're so well built, including the wrought iron. But only the wrought iron facing the sea, they're cooled a bit by the sea breezes, was able to survive the heat. Further inland, there is very little metal that was not melted. You have, of course, along the waterfront, the quay, literally like our circular quay. The survivors, the refugees who are looking for any way away from the fire. There's a complete lack of boats. Smyrna was a major trading port. There were a lot of ships. We have photos, we have paintings, we have postcards before the catastrophe. Dozens, at any one time, dozens of ships in the harbour. Hardly any of them helped. Hardly any of them actually rescued people. We do have, this could be your next painting, we do have the story of one Japanese-owned vessel, the Takei Maru, captained by a guy called Norito, who actually dumped his cargo of silk and other products into the water to take on refugees.
Wow. Wow, what an amazing man.
My good friends Stavros Stavridis and Vikemba Kenyan rediscovered this story from both from Japanese, from American, and also from Greek archives. We all originally thought it was only one trip. Further research has been done by others, by Zachos Samolava from Thessaloniki. He actually went back 4 times. He rescued something like 2,500 people. Wow. Over these 4 trips.
Look at the goosebumps. Wow.
Backwards and forwards between Smyrna and Piraeus.
What an amazing man.
Most of the crew was Chinese. Don't think it's a massive vessel. We're talking about absolutely packed. It was 800 people. And that's like packed on like sardines. So there's a possible painting. And I love the way you've got the 3 Western sailors. You can't really tell if they're British, American, English,
because they were there.
Italian, French. You can't really tell, but you can tell they're sailors. And they're in the classic 3 monkeys pose.
Yeah.
All right, this is why I call them the 3 Maimunas. This one cannot hear anything. This one cannot see anything. This one cannot say anything.
Yes, they were told to zip.
They were only allowed, the captains of the war vessels that were in the harbour were told that you're only allowed to pick up our nationals. So unless they had a passport or some documentation that said you're a citizen of Italy, France, UK, US, whatever it was, you were not allowed to be picked up. We actually have stories elsewhere, not from Smyrna but from Mudanya, where the French vessels would actually pour hot water on people trying to reach up onto the vessel.
Horror stories.
Because
so
they were
sad.
not allowed.
So sad.
And you got the rowboats, the ones, because some of these rowboats over here would overfill and then capsize.
Yeah, like this one here, capsize.
And we have photographs from National Geographic from the time of months afterwards. They would be fishing in the harbour, but fishing for bodies to grab whatever gold, whatever jewellery, the people who drowned, literally within metres of the shoreline, would be wearing at the time. It's a dark painting. It's not like Convergence of Glory we spoke about earlier, or Patrida. This is a very dark painting, a very dark story.
This is a dark story, and I'm going to paint another one with the same dimensions, and it's going to be called The Aftermath. And that'll be next year, for the anniversary of Smyrna Ablaze. So we will unveil it next year, because after this, it was the aftermath.
Of course.
Yeah, so for me, it's just so sad, and I just had to do it because there's no paintings. There's only two paintings of Smyrna Ablaze in history. No, only two artists actually painted the fire. Where you look at the fire of England, there's hundreds of paintings. The fire of Russia, hundreds of paintings, but there was no painting of Smyrna burning.
And this shows just how dark a period of Greek history this is.
I think they just...
Greek society still hasn't dealt with it. Trust me. Greek society still has not dealt with it. If you talk about the genocide of the Hellenes, if you talk about Smyrna as a genocide, which it was, you are politically labelled in Greece.
Really?
You are given this tag, right, left, whatever it is, which to me doesn't belong in Greek discourse anyway. So there's, at a deeper level, we still have not dealt with the trauma of the Asia Minor catastrophe, of the genocide of the Hellenes. And one of the reasons is, within a generation, you had World War II and the Civil War and the occupation by the Nazis. A new set of traumas there. And then less than a generation after that, you had the junta. And that finished with the invasion of Cyprus. So it's a series of traumas that which our society, our diaspora have not dealt with.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation. I'll end our conversation there.
Listening to you talk about Smyrna, you brought up how advanced they were as a place, as people, and they actually exported sultanas to Australia.
In the 1820s.
Their music, their dress was so superior to the rest of Greece. And
you say superior, I don't use that sort of word.
No, they were.
Very
for me,
different.
because I look at their dress and their hairstyles and the way they lived. It was European. It was European. Greeks were not that wealthy.
Except for Athens and Thessaloniki. The rest of the Greek state, the rest of Greece, what we call Greece, was a backwater. Culturally, economically, it was a backwater. Right? Smyrna was a cosmopolitan, multilingual, multi-faith, multi-ethnic city.
It blew me away when I heard your talk from
Smyrna was a Christian city, first of all. The dominant population, the dominant part of the population was Christian. When you factor in the Greeks, the Armenians, and the Franks, as they were known, the Levantines, the Western Europeans who had lived in Smyrna, sometimes for generations, that's not just a year or two.
I'm blown away.
They were 60-70% of the population. Then you had a very large Jewish community. Then you also had the various Muslim populations, which generally are labelled as Turkish, but Muslims more accurate, because some were Turkish-speaking, Albanian, Arabic, you name it. So it was very diverse. It was exporting, as you said, since the 1820s. Smyrna was exporting sultanas to Sydney. We have the advertisements in the newspapers of the time.
That blew me like that, you know.
There were a number of consulates, there were international banks, there were international trading houses,
Why did
offices.
they burn it? Why did they burn such a magnificent place?
Very simple. The nickname for Smyrna amongst the Muslims was Gauri Smyrna of the infidels. The way you purify something, you have a cut, you have a wound in battle. The old way of purifying, of closing, of cauterizing the wound was by burning it. Getting a hot piece of metal and putting it on the wound, that way it closed it. It closed the skin and protected from infection.
So they burnt Smyrna
To purify.
because they didn't agree with how advanced it was and how civilized it was.
Yes.
That's so sad.
It is sad, but it's not the first time, not the last time.
Yeah.
Look what the Nazis did to Warsaw.
Yeah.
Look what the Nazis did to a number of cities in Russia.
Yeah.
Or back then, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union.
It's very sad, very sad.
Look what the Japanese did in China and Korea.
It just goes on.
It goes. We don't learn from history. So.
Yeah. Right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Wait a minute.